G'day guys, kia ora, goeiedag, my name is Wildkard. Thank you for watching the Wildkard Rugby Show, and yes, I am back in my mum's bunker, back in Sydney, and of course, as you can see, I have returned with the greatest club rugby jersey in the history of the world, the Mighty Crusaders, in honor of James O'Connor, and obviously the biggest cheats as well, but hey, still, right? The greatest jersey, the winningest of winningest rugby club teams in the world, and the backbone of the All Blacks, and yeah, it was a discount. I couldn't resist, but hey, when I see a bargain, I buy the dip, and finally I got one. I've been wanting to have one of these since 2006, but instead I bought the Hurricanes jersey. So now I finally got a real reason to buy one because of James O'Connor, and yeah, it looks pretty good. One thing that did, got me a little bit annoyed is the advertising. I believe it's the same company, but it's like a different logo. The one they have on the players is like a circle, and then this is supposedly the same company, but just different logo, which kind of like, pissed me off a little bit. But hey, overall, the trip to New Zealand has been absolutely amazing. Apparently the greatest rugby rivalry tour is coming up next year, but hey, New Zealand was absolutely incredible. So I was offered to skydive actually, to couple days on Tuesday, but instead I went to this place. This was Mount Sunday. This picture in Mount Sunday, but this was near Mount Sunday, and it's basically where they filmed Lord of the Rings for the the Rohan, the Edoras, which is the capital city of Rohan, and this place was just mind-blowingly great. Right? It was so beautiful, so raw. Like I have never seen anything this amazing in my life, and it's just so pristine, and it just hits you. It hits you like, emotionally grips you, right? Like if you ever, watched like I guess maybe a impressionist painting in person, you might have this feeling like, the impressionist painting, you might get a little bit of emotional, like you can't really explain it, but you get a bit of emotional looking at a impressionist painting, like in real life, live in person. This was kind of like that. Like you look at this scene, it's just so overwhelming, so pristine, and just a raw nature with the clouds rolling over the hills. It was so good, like you can't hold back tears. And I wasn't the only one. There were people coming in, and we were talking, and they were just like, it was so overwhelming. They were like, we were all just like in tears watching the scenery as we were driving into Edoras at Mount Sunday, in this beautiful filming location for the Lord of the Rings. This was on the way to the mountain, and you can probably, you have to zoom in to see this, but these mountains here, these are actually like mountains, right? These are clouds rolling over the mountaintops. These are probably like 500, 600, maybe even taller mountains in the distance. Just absolutely incredible scenery, and some of these mountains have snow on top as well, and it kind of like blends in with the cloud a little bit, but it's just like snow-capped mountains everywhere. And this little hill here is the capital city of Rohan. It's where they built the castle out of foam apparently, and they did all the scenes where the kingdom is on top of this hill. And then afterwards they've taken everything apart and left it just absolutely pristine the way it was. It was just absolutely mind-blowingly beautiful here. So that's a hill there, a bit of close up. So this is basically the view around the hill. These mountains, again, very tall. They have a little bit of snow on top of as well. It's covered by the clouds. And all these mountains have a little bit of snow on top left as well. And this is right at the top of the hill where they film of Edoras, essentially. Just like the color and just like the melting snow creating these creeks everywhere. It's just like the color, the everything there was just so overwhelming. It's just insane, absolutely insane. Much better than skydiving, right? And look at that, look at the colors. And that in the distance there is snow-capped mountains. You can't zoom, but if you go on my Instagram, you can zoom in and see that. Like the snow-capped mountains all in the distance. It was just mind-blowing. This water here, taking my shoes off with my hiking partner, just walked past it. It was nice and cool and just pristine fresh water as well. And you can see here, just incredible. This is just water melted from these snow-topped mountains there in the distance. Again, these would normally be like filled with water, but because it's early in the season, I guess it's not raining. But this is literally in the middle of the river as well. You can see some dead branches there. Just absolutely mind-blowingly beautiful here. You can see a much better shot here of the snow caps on top of the mountain. Just absolutely pristine. You can see like parts of it is still like, you know, thawing out from the recent snow, and then parts of it's already turning green. It was just like, yeah, it's just insane. Absolutely insane. I don't know why this is like not a huge tourist spot. It's so pristine. There's, you know, a lot of the tourist spots, what gets me off is like, you go to a place that's so beautiful, and because they have like hotels built nearby for the tourists, there's like a power line just going into the town. And then it kind of ruins the view a little bit. You know, I love serenity, right? All that serenity in the distance for everybody to behold, and there's none of that serenity here in the in Honduras. Just absolutely like mind-blowingly beautiful. And that's my hiking partner. I met there, did a bit of hiking around there. She's camping there by herself, so just had a look around. It was great times, and yeah, it's good trip overall. With that said, you know, we're gonna talk about rugby. In this trip, I also met a guy named Dan. Let's just say Dan from Otago. And yeah, we'll talk about a lot of things that I really want to touch upon, because, you know, rugby is a ever-changing sport. Rugby is one of the things where, you know, there's a lot of issues. And, you know, after talking to Dan, there were some things I think in our discussion I really wanted to talk about in this video. And because there's not that much rugby news anyway, because we're going into the November test officially kind of starts off next week. So I just want to talk about a few things, right? And it kind of relates to some of the news here anyway. Number one, I think I can kind of see the All Blacks and Wallabies are doing this a lot more. We are branching out with the All Blacks 15, the Wallabies 15, the Australia 15, the B team essentially. We're also getting a lot of the clubs have arranged themselves to play off-season games against Japan teams. I think the Reds play against Italian teams, Benetton there as well. And I think this is great. This is exactly what we need to do. Because one of the problems I kind of was talking to Dan about, and this was kind of something that I realized after the July Test series when the French sent their B team, is the lack of, you know, high-grade game time for our players. If you look at the French top 14, they play 20 to 25 games, which is basically tier 1, highest quality rugby, club rugby, and, you know, the only thing better is basically test rugby games, 20 to 25 a year, because the top 14 season are very long, and then they also play the European Champions Cup. So 2025 depends on how much rest they get. A minimum, essentially, these players are getting, and that's just for the B players. Their starting players are also getting, you know, they do a fewer games in club, but they get more games time out of test rugby. So a lot of these players are accumulating a lot of test caps, and that's just something a lot of our players are not getting, right? If you look at the All Blacks, right? If you are in the All Blacks, you will get a similar number of games per year. You know, you play Super Rugby 10 to 15 rounds, 10 to 15 weeks, you know, probably 10, and then you do another 10 to 15 for the All Blacks, you accumulate to about 20 to 25 games if you're an All Black test player. But for everybody else, and I think this is the problem, for everybody else, they're not going to get that amount of game time, right? So if you look at someone like, say, AJ Lamb, if he, you know, potentially he could be the guy that replaces Jordie Barrett at some point. He's not getting nearly enough game time, you know, top one, you know, tier 1 quality or tier 1 plus, let's call the test rugby, tier 1 or tier 1 plus games in a year. So he's only getting like 15 maximum Super Rugby games a year, maybe like an All Black game or All Black 15 game. So he's, you know, every year he's falling behind by about 10 games to the people at top 14, the overseas players, the top 14 players in France. And he's also falling, you know, almost 10 games behind to Jordie Barrett. Right? So that's two problems. One, you know, the All Blacks reserves are not keeping up the pace that the other nations' reserves, especially France, the French reserves, are getting. So if the All Blacks players, someone gets injured, the replacement is much, much less experienced than the French replacements. And that is because the French play so many games, and that is because we, you know, we have to take their B team at home in July, right? Because they have too many game times for their players, too much game time allocated to the players during their club season, right? That is that is something that we have to, essentially subsidize them to do. But on our hand, our players, our developing players aren't getting the same opportunities, same 20 plus games. That is tier 1 games that is on par with the French. And now I know a lot of these players put in NPC, but NPC is just, I'm sorry, just not the same level as top 14, and not same level as Super Rugby. And we need to get, I figure out a way to extend that extra game time for our players. And I do think that additional games, additional test games in July, before the July and before November for our, All Blacks, official All Blacks team, and All Blacks, F15, and same with Wallaby and Wallaby 15 as well. And especially for me, I think we should definitely have at least one game in Fiji against the Fijians with the All Blacks and the Wallabies once a year, whether it be before July, or before the November spring tour, because I can't tell you how many comments I get that says, can't wait, I really want to, love to see the All Blacks, love to see the Wallabies play the Flying Fijians, but we want to see them in Suva, and they will sell out in Suva. Okay, so in Fiji, right? Anywhere in Fiji. So that is something that, that I think we should definitely expand. That is our advantage, right? We don't have the top 14, we don't have the money, but our advantage is we have Fiji, we have Tonga, we have Japan, we have Samoa around us, and they all need game time. They're all developing nations, and we need to figure out a way to give these guys game time. Like literally sending our players to every year to satisfy the fans, and then to give our players more game time. We need to get our B players, reserve more game time up to that 20 to 25 tier 1 plus games, just to compete against the French. That is number one. Number two, because the fact that our reserves aren't getting as much game time, you have the people that are actually at the All Blacks level getting way more game time than everybody else, and they are like, no one can actually challenge them for their position anymore, right? Think about some of the players like Jordie Barrett, even Rico was at one point was difficult to replace. Think about Jordie Barrett, think about R360. Beauden Barrett maybe at one point was a bit of a irreplaceable, you could say. And, and these players, right, they're not irreplaceable because of the fact that they're getting more game time, high quality game time than their reserves, right? Like I just used to, AJ Lam or maybe Tavatafa Nawai. If you think about it, Tavatafa Nawai plays 12 games a year. Jordie Barrett plays 22 games a year or 25 games a year. Tier 1 games. How is Tavatafa Nawai ever going to catch up to Jordie Barrett and take over the 12 jersey or even challenge the 12 jersey? Ever, if he's not even getting the same game time, right? And that's also getting a lot of those players more complacent, right? Because there's no one challenging their position. No one is competing, is even remotely close to competing for their position. Not saying that Jordie Barrett don't play 100%, right? Jordie Barrett's absolute, one of the greatest All Blacks ever. But some players could get into the sense that, my position are pretty secure. Sometimes some criticism have been levied against the All Blacks recently for not having enough heart, right, from the fan base. Maybe that's the reason, because they don't have anybody that plays nearly amount of games as they do and can't challenge them for that position in the All Black jersey. It's guaranteed for them because there is enough game time for the other players. And I think that's another huge reason to just add more game time, high quality game time. NPC is just not enough. I'm sorry. High quality game times for these players and put them under pressure to compete for that black jersey, for that, Wallabies jersey. That's one really important part of the picture. That's number one. Number two, obviously the competition is hitting up with Rugby 360. So there's some people saying this was cancelled, but apparently I'm not sure if it's cancelled or not. Apparently, so the Rugby League has come out with a very strong statement yesterday, essentially saying that, hey, anybody who signs with Rugby 360 from the Rugby League, you are banned for 10 years to come back to rugby. So you're not allowed to come back to Rugby League for 10 years. Same with agents. If your agent talks to them, your agent also banned from representing players in Rugby League for 10 years. So they've come down very hard because they were one of the main targets of Rugby 360. Nothing has been said of similar level from Rugby Australia yet or any other competition. But yeah, it is. It does. Some people say it's cancelled, but it doesn't look like it's cancelled. Essentially, it will start off, with a 12-round competition next year, and then it will grow to a 16-round competition in 2028. This franchise is based all over the place: London, Miami, Tokyo, Dubai, Boston, Cape Town, Lisbon, and Madrid. So not all rugby nations, all the rugby teams will be registered in United Arab Emirates, tell you something about the UAE. I took the Emirates flight home, and there was like literally the in-flight sound system. The default play was some podcast that was trying to make, let's just say, older men marrying very, very, very young women. They're trying to make that sound like it's normal. I was a little bit disturbed by listening to that sort of shit it wasn't my choice. It was like the default sound that you put on when you play with the media player that's on the plane. But really, really concerning stuff. But anyway, it is who's back in this competition. Players will have their own right to their own IP. So if they make a video game out of it, the players will get paid for that. They can advertise themselves. They can go work as an actor essentially, or represent themselves in other parts of the world outside of rugby to maximize their value as well. There will be a draft every year, yada yada yada, and also the players don't have to and the players don't have to reside in the area that they are the teams are based in. They can live somewhere else and go play. So yeah, it is definitely competition for us. Again, I don't know how this is going to affect rugby overall for our parts of the world, but I do think that it is competition and we need to wake up and really start to sort out our own backyard before everything gets absolutely destroyed by competition. So this is just the article about Volandi making the 10-year ban statement. And yeah, so speaking of getting everything right, obviously if you watch my channel, you have known that how I feel about the tour that's coming up for South Africa and New Zealand. As a result, the Rugby Championship and the calendar for the next 4 years or so has been completely shuffled around. 4 years because next year New Zealand's going to South Africa, and 4 years later South Africa's going to New Zealand. So the whole cycle, essentially World Cup cycle, has been completely revamped as a result of this. And you know how I feel about this. I spoke to Dan from Otago about this as well. A lot of you guys are like, oh, can't wait to see 4 test series. I mean, first of all, after that Wellington game, do you still want to see 4 tests? Things can change like that. It's game rugby. Number 2, let me ask you 2 questions. How many of you remember the game between the All Blacks playing with the Wallabies in Hong Kong? I think a lot of you probably we remember seeing a game in Hong Kong. But do you know there was actually 2 games played in Hong Kong in 2 different years? I think all of you remember the one where McDonald missed the touch or something and he got fired. Everybody remembers that. And then he came back and won the World Cup for the All Blacks. Everybody remembers that. Probably because not O'Donnell, McDonald. Is it? What is that? McDonald? Anyway, anyway, everybody remembers that. The kick, right? But how many? But then again, some of you say, I remember seeing 2 Hong Kong games. A few of you might still say that. But how many of you remember a Bledisloe Cup 4th game played in Japan? Put it in the comments. I definitely don't remember. I looked at it and I was like, wow, I didn't know this game. I have absolutely no recollection this ever happening, but it apparently happened. There was a 4th game played in Japan. And let's see, and everybody knows that this tour has a 4th game in a mystery venue to be announced, probably at Twickenham or maybe in Chicago in America. So yeah, starting to smell familiar, guys. Starting to see why I think this is not that good of an idea. Even just taking, even just the fact that we're absolutely destroying the Rugby Championship in the process. Just the fact that the 4-game series has been tried before and failed with the 4th game in a country that's not home to either of the games, in a third country. We already tried this and failed. I don't know why we're doing it again. Obviously, we know why. Silver Lake wants their money back in the All Blacks, right? But hey, this is what's happening. So we, obviously the tour will consist with a bunch of games in local teams in South Africa next year. We've got the Stormers, first up Sharks, Bulls, and then the first test at Ellis Park, and then you've got the Lions, the Cats in Johannesburg, and then you've got the second test in Cape Town, and third test will be back. Third test will be back in Johannesburg right after that, and then the 4th test somewhere around the world. Maybe they'll come here playing Sydney in Allianz Stadium, right? But hey, it is what it is. It's I don't think it's a good idea. A lot of guys will probably see, one of the tests will get a blowout, maybe for the Springboks, and then the interest will plummet off the cliff, right? This is all done, right, for Silver Lake to get the money back, to sell out their stake to somebody else, to hand off the bags, right? And one of the things that, you know, unfortunately, the people that's going to hold the bag is probably going to be your super funds in New Zealand. It's cooked. It's cooked. And it is just going to be the way it is. And this is where they're going to cash out because the revenue is going to look amazing. Right? They're going to be like, oh my God, look at all the money we made. Now the value is going up 50, 100%. And then they're going to sell it off to all the super funds in New Zealand to get their money back. And then once you get it, the Rugby Championship is destroyed. The bloodless little cup will be playing one game, I believe, in here in Australia, in Adelaide, I think. I'm definitely going. And yeah, so let's have a look at the schedule as well. So everything's been destroyed for this, and all because, let's face it, Silver Lake needs to cash out their money. So instead of the Rugby Championship, next year's going to Nations Championship. It'll just be, you know, one game between each of the nations, essentially, including the bloodless lookout, one game, and then the series, the tour jammed in between, and then Australia and, you know, Argentina had to figure out something else to do their own shit in the sides. And then in 2027, the Rugby World Cup year, they have announced a full Rugby Championship. We do play a full Rugby Championship anyway. It's just that the last 3 games is considered a warm-up. Now that those games will be considered part of the Rugby Championship and not a warm-up. So I guess that makes it look a little bit better. The Rugby Championship is still a full 6 game, but it's literally the same, but they just don't call it warm-up games anymore. And you have the Rugby World Cup, and then you have the Nations Championship, and then the Nations Championship. Nations Championship is the November and July test series. So so the tour will involve one game. Anyway, I don't fucking know. Rugby Championship run as normal in 2028. 2029 in July there will be a Lions tour, and then Rugby Championship, Women's World Cup, and then November. So in 2030, the tour series will be back. New Zealand will be visited by South Africa, and then you'll have one bloodless World Cup game again. You know, imagine the winning streak of the All Blacks holding on to the bloodless World Cup ended next year because there was only one game. All because of money, right? You're destroying all the history, everything for a bit of money so that Silver Lake can hand the bags to your super funds, right? So yeah, if I'm a Kiwi, I will protest and then also buy the shares anyway, and then I will never sell, okay? If I get my hands on the All Black stock, I will never sell. You will never get it back, okay? I will hold on to it and pass it on to, like, you know, my grandchildren. You'll never get it back. It'll be put away forever, okay? And you'll always be 99% New Zealand owned, okay? And that 1% is mine, okay? You never get it back. That's just me, though. You know, I would do that at a loss. And if it goes to 0, I'll buy the whole company. I'll buy the whole team. But hey, you know, that's just me. I'm stupid. And obviously, New Zealand Rugby is stupid enough to sell it. You know, I will definitely buy it. But hey, for all of you guys, actually have a super fund and actually, you know, part of retirement, not really a good idea to have it overpriced stock piled into your fund and to give money to Silver Lake. But it is what it is. Let's move on to talk about something else. Oh yeah, this is another thing I want to talk about it. So I discussed this with Dan from Otago. So, you know, there's, you know, Australian Rugby Award honor every year, and they obviously wanted to put Swali'i, you know, their most expensive player there into an award for media attention. You know, I don't actually mind if they do. I actually don't mind about this because this is obviously just the media award for, you do this, you give it whatever you want, right? It doesn't matter. But what I do think is a big problem in Rugby Australia, I don't have evidence for this, but I think that there is a lot of things that just look really weird to me. Like, it seems to me that there are some backseat drivers at Rugby Australia who has a lot of influence over the coaches that is deciding on a lot of these things for commercial value instead of actually do what's best for the team. For example, test, the second bloodless little test, Wallabies went in, start kicking penalty goals. I mean, that's not something they did for the entire, you know, series, right? I am all for developing new players. Do it against the French like they do to us, but not, you know, against Rugby Championship. Again, somebody, you know, I hear the commentary, people always in the media talk about, oh, they need to take the penalty goals, it's test rugby, you got to take it more seriously. Somebody got into the ears of the coaches who are not a coach, and told them to do that, to play more conservatively, and that is concerning to me. Somebody outside the coaching team got into the coach's ears and changed the way the teams play in a dramatic way, and I don't like that. I think that is absolutely terrible for Rugby Australia. You got to let the coaches make decisions. That's one of the incidents. I think that someone is from the outside has got into the inside. Another thing is that Swali'i has been playing at fullback for the Waratahs. That's another thing that indicates to me somebody outside of the rugby clubs, Rugby Australia, had influence inside the game, inside the team, to get Swali'i to play at fullback instead of outside centre like he does for the Wallabies. I mean, obviously, Dan McKellar is supposed to be the one that makes the decision. There's no way in hell Dan McKellar will look at Swali'i and look at what Joe Schmidt had done with Swali'i at outside centre and say, fuck you, Joe Schmidt. I want him at fullback. He's a better fullback when he clearly wasn't. And, there's no way that was done because, Dan McKellar decided that was the best thing. Somebody in the back wanted to make him, wanted to make Swali'i like, the Israel Folau playing a fullback, made that decision on behalf of the coaches or pressured the coaches or influenced coaches somehow to make that decision. I don't know what's going on here in Rugby Australia. Someone might tell me that you're completely wrong, Wildcard. If that's the case, I'm sorry. But a lot of these things just don't seem to add up to me. This is, again, maybe an indicator of, obviously, marketability for a player is more important than actually being honest about who's the most valuable player at Australian Rugby Award. I do think that the most valuable player for Rugby Australia is the captain, Harry Wilson. His leadership is outstanding for the Wallabies and for the Reds. So yeah, and obviously they're gonna put Swali'i in there because he's more marketable. I think it's Anyway, it is a bit of a disgrace and a bit of a rant for me there as well. Moving on out of this one. So the July Test Series, the November Test Series, the referees has been announced. Let's just look at some of the big ones. Japan, Australia, Ben O'Keefe. England, Australia, Nika Shumakeli. Japan, South Africa. I don't know who this guy is. Eugen Kloss from Ireland. Scotland, USA. Ireland, New Zealand, in Chicago will be by Pierre Brosset from France. We've got, let's move on to the big games only. Ireland, Japan. Again, this is an Italian one. I don't know this guy at all. Scotland, New Zealand. Nick Barry. That's a good one. Luke Pearce, Georgia, USA. England, Fiji. This is a big one. It's going to be Paul Williams from New Zealand. Hopefully, Paul Williams stick it to the English a little bit for us there and help out the Fijian fans. Italy, Australia. Andre Brace. France, South Africa. This is a big one. Gardner, Angus Gardner. I think a lot of South Africans will be very happy to see Gardner as the referee for the French game because Angus Gardner is the best and is one of the pride of Australia out of the Australian system. Let's look at the big ones. Argentina, Wales, Ben O'Keefe. That's pretty good. Italy, South Africa, James Dolman. England, New Zealand, Andrea Piatti. Oh yeah, one of your teams will get the pleasure of getting stiffed by the Italian. Wales versus Japan, Matthew Carley. Ireland, Australia, Carl Dixon at Lance Down Under Road. And we've got France, Fiji, Christopher Riley. Who else have we got? Scotland, Argentina, Andrew Brace again. We've got Wales, New Zealand, Holly Davison. That's a pretty big one. Holly was the Women's World Cup final there as well. And she still hasn't yet proven to me that she's human. She's Terminator, I believe. And anyway, moving on. We've got Georgia, Japan. I don't know that guy again. Ireland, South Africa, Matthew Carley from England. France, Australia, Luke Pearce, England again. It's not bad. Scotland, Tonga, Luke Ramos from France. England, Argentina, Pierre Brosset. And then finally, Wales, Argentina, Luke Ramos. So Piatti only has one big game. That is good news for everyone. So there's a lot of people has been jumping around. Obviously, November has been named. Team has been named. Pitagas Soakula, who played one game, maybe 2 games under Fozzie, and then was dropped. And a lot of people were a little bit surprised. People thought that he was played just to lock him in for 4 years, essentially. So now he's suddenly 4 years later, he's eligible to play for another nation, and he's He's part of the squad for the Fijian side in the November Test series. And yeah, Wallabies versus Japan 15 this weekend. Wallaby 8 versus Japan 15 this weekend. It's a big names to be named. We're looking forward to see that. The Jamie Joseph, obviously the All Blacks 15 as well, has made some selection calls. Not too much to talk about. Just one thing, Christian Leo Willie. I'm very, very high on this guy. But according to the Crusaders insiders, they think he's a little bit short as a line-out option for a number 8. So yeah, they have to think about potentially having him as an open side flanker. But that's just like so much competition there. Yeah, it's just interesting. I thought he's so talented, so good. I mean, I'm pretty sure he gets lifted for the Crusaders anyway. At least I'm pretty sure he gets as an option, line-in option for the Crusaders. But apparently that's not good enough for Test rugby. Not tall enough for I mean, the height is not that big of an issue for the if you're the third option far back, because the distance is the more important. But yeah, it's interesting perspective from the insiders at the Crusaders. Gal Prem has hit some record numbers, so it's pretty good. The rebranding has worked for them. George Ford has re-signed 3 years to the Rugby World Cup with Sales Shark. The drop goals will be back in Australia. Oh boy. Richie Mwanga has talked about potentially he was considering, obviously I thought he was going to definitely go to play Tonga or play for Samoa for the next World Cup. But hey, he's eligible, but he decided to return to New Zealand, and he's talked about how he thought about it, but he decided to come back to play for the All Blacks instead. Charlie Cale has resigned with the Brumbies for an extension to stay in Australia. There's one injury for the All Blacks squad heading into November tests. Patrick Tuipulotu has been ruled out with the Grand Slam tour. So who was it? There's a couple of players been caught in. Sam Darry calls in, and there was a couple of other ones been caught in as well. What was his name? But anyway, there's what was his name? Calling for De Groot. One of the Canterbury props got caught in for De Groot. But anyway, moving on. I can talk about here. Here it is. It's Hurricanes pro actually. Tavita Mafilio has been called in for Tara Lomax. George Bell has been called in for Brody McAllister. Tupavai has been out. So George Lord has been called in for the All Blacks injuries. There it is. Finally, a little bit of news from South Africa. Thomas du Toit, the tank engine, has decided to exit Bath to join the Sharks back in Durban. Anyway, that's the news for this week. A long one, lots of ranting. And thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week when we kick off the November Internationals and Grand Slam Tour for the All Blacks. Cheers.